the meeting to order. This is the June 17, 2021 regular meeting. Let the records show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Please join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. We will have our roll call. Andrew Bisco. Here. Sean Glovier.
Here.
Debbie Villa-Gomez.
Here.
Maria Douglas.
Here.
Felicia Moody.
Here.
Darrell Owens.
Here.
John Clark present. We have a full contingent tonight. Thank you all for coming. Item number 3 on our agenda, public comments on agenda items. Can we check to see if there's anyone who signed up? There should be 2 of them there, one for on agenda and one non-agenda. That's good, sometimes. The records show that we have no one who signed up to speak on public comments on agenda items. Item 4, public comments on non-agenda items. We have no one who signed up to speak on that issue. We'll now move to item 5, special district recognitions. Mr. G.
We have 2 from central office. We have Kim Daly and Ashley Sawatowski. Sorry. So we want to commend them. They've been doing a great job. I believe Ms. Williams nominated them. So.
Anything else?
That's it.
Then item 6, the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will normally be voted on in a single motion unless a trustee or board member requests to remove an item from the consent agenda. Is there any item which a board member requests be removed from tonight's consent agenda to discuss separately? I hear that no one has requested to remove an item from the consent agenda, and I'll entertain a motion with regard to the consent agenda as presented.
Make a motion to approve all items under the consent agenda as presented.
Motion by Mr. Glovier.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bisco. Any further discussion with regard to the consent agenda? Then all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair hears none. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We now move to item 7, which is for informational purposes only. Mr. G.
Okay. So update 117 came out, and now we have our legislative session that just ended May 31st, and now we have the signing period, which will end on June 20th. That will change further legislation, so we'll expect another update to come shortly. But a lot of this is clearing up language from legislative session. There are only 3 local policies that really are going to take our consideration. Most of it is legal policies, which we do not adopt. The board does not adopt. So really, we have CH Local, which is purchasing acquisition during emergency situations, and CB Local, both of those are dealing with that, and then DCEC Local, which is compensation, benefits, and leaves. Most of this is just really clearing up, removing from policy what they should be procedural things, which we've had those discussions before. That's what TASB's doing with these policies.
This is a non-action item, but it will come up again for another reading. So if any board member has questions or concerns, please address those to Mr. G so that we can make certain we discuss them thoroughly as we approach action on this item. Anything else on that item for any trustees? Any concerns?
None now.
Okay. And we'll move on to Section 8, business items requiring action. 8A, which is discuss and consider approval of the 2021-2022 JJ AEP Memorandum of Understanding. Mr. G.
Okay, so every year we have to have a memorandum of understanding with the JJAP out of Tarrant County. And this is just a formality that we go through every year with them. So.
Everyone have a chance to look at that MOU?
Yes.
And we're estimating the number of students that could go in?
We budget a certain amount, which I believe is roughly around $15,000 in amount. But as far as a number of students, we don't have an exact number. But, you know, it's usually 1 or 2 per year. So.
And if there's an issue, we have more, we would have to amend the budget?
We'd have to amend on that.
right? Any questions with regard to this item? Then I'll entertain a motion with regard to approving the 2021-2022 JJAEP Memorandum of Understanding as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2021-2023 JJAEP Memorandum of Understanding as presented.
Motion by Mr. Bisco,
Second.
second by Mrs. Douglas. Any further discussion with regard to this item? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair hears none. That motion passes unanimously. We move now to item 8B, discuss, consider approval of resolution regarding ESSER 3 and policy CB local. Mr. G.
Okay, so the requirements for getting the grant funding, these ESSER 3 funds are being released as grants, and in order to do that, we have to make a statement on our website. They're allowing us to do it on the website. So there's just a clause that's being added into CB local, and I'm trying to find that exact language. Back up a second. I can read the resolution, but I was on the other page. Whereas on April 26, 2001, TA notified school districts of the opportunity to apply for their allocation of elementary and secondary school emergency relief 3 ESSER 3 funds, which should be used in response to the pandemic and to address student learning lost as a result of COVID-19. Whereas TEA published guidance regarding how these funds can be used and local compliance requirements school districts must follow, including a recommendation that districts develop local board policy to address how the board will provide the required public notice regarding federal grants and awards for consistency. Whereas Texas Education Code 11.151 gives the Board of Trustees the exclusive power and duty to govern and oversee the management of the public schools of the district, and whereas the board finds that a need exists to adjust local policy provisions to address public notice for federal grants and awards and approval of required grant plans, now therefore be it resolved that this Board of Trustees of Kennedale Independent School District adopts the following text for inclusion at CB local, state, and federal revenue source. The district shall provide public notice of federal grant applications through an information item at a board meeting and by publishing information on the district's website. The district shall make available opportunities for public input as required by law on the granting agency. Approval of required grant and award plans shall be by the superintendent. The change to CB local is in effect based on the adoption date of this resolution adopted this the 17th day of June 2021 by the Board of Trustees. That's the resolution. So the language is what the clause we changed are those two bulleted items there.
And we've already sent out, I know I've seen on some school sites, requests for input.
We sent out our survey, requested community input there. We have also had our needs assessment meetings that were public. We've also had we will be having community meetings. So.
And do we know a cutoff date for all of this?
We have to have the deadlines to July.
The cutoff date for the survey is the 18th.
No.
It's June 18th, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
You
So
talking about the
tomorrow.
survey or for the?
Well, just the information
grant?
gathering and
Okay,
then-
all right. So, yes.
So the survey is due tomorrow. That's what I saw. And then you said July is when?
I believe it's July 27th is the deadline to have the grant in. So, yes.
And we submit an application, is it a grant application process to be reviewed and then determine where we qualify or not?
Do we have an overall, I know this is, it kind of works with the resolution, but it doesn't. An overall view of how many people have responded to the survey? Just a ballpark figure?
I don't have access to the survey, so I can't tell you, but I can get that information. I know on Tuesday of this week, I think we had 423 replies, and so we sent out additional reminders and sent a message out to the principals and asked them to try to get their staff, students, families to respond. So
I know Delaney sent out I saw the message the other day saying, please.
Yeah, I've seen us ask, I've seen it on Facebook, all up and down Twitter. The schools, we're doing everything we can. I just wondered how many people have responded.
You know, we can send them out, we don't always do.
Right, we don't know who's
Please,
gonna
please,
take
please
care of it,
answer.
so
Yeah.
if you're watching, please do the survey before tomorrow.
And those are the requirements that the TA has set out for that
Yeah.
grant.
You're correct.
Any other questions or concerns with regard to item 8B? Then I will entertain a motion with regard to adopting the resolution regarding ESER 3 revised policy, CB local as presented.
I make a motion to adopt the resolution regarding ESER 3 to revise policy CB local as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Owens and seconded by Mr. Bisco. Is there further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair hears none. That motion is passed unanimously. We now move to items 8C, discuss, consider approval of resolution regarding micro purchases, CVB legal. Mr. G.
Okay. So this is another resolution, and let me get my screen up. It's a resolution for the micro purchases. So whereas policy CBB legal micro purchase threshold means 10,000 except as provided by 48 CFR 2.101. Whereas the district may self-certify a threshold up to 50,000 on an annual basis and must maintain documentation to be made available to the federal awarding agency and auditors in accordance with 2C.F.R.200.334. Whereas the self-certification must include a justification, clear indication of the threshold, and supporting documentation of any of the following: a qualification as a low-risk auditee in accordance with the criteria in 2C.R.200.520 for the most recent audit, an annual institutional risk assessment to identify, mitigate, and manage financial risk, or for public institutions, a higher threshold consistent with state law. Whereas the TA has determined for 2020-21, Kennedale has been assigned a risk level of low. Now therefore be resolved that the Board of Trustees of Kennedale Independent School District self-certify a threshold up to 50,000 on an annual basis. It would be adopted as of this date, June 21st, of Board of Trustees. So basically, because of the ESSER funding and the grant awarded and going through the EDGAR process, we would have to sit there every time we purchase something because of the grant situation. If it, at the $10,000 threshold, any purchases that we made in relationship to that would have to come to the board, before the board. And aligning it with the spending authority given to me as a superintendent with 50,000, we're bumping into the 50,000 to sit there and align with the other threshold for the spending as a district, so we don't have to bring every purchase to the district with the, as opposed to the grant. So, that sound accurate, Mr. Adams? Okay.
So explain the $50,000 annual basis. Is that a cumulative total for all micro purchases or individual? Pardon?
Per vendor.
Per vendor.
And this is, has to be, reach the $10,000 to be governed by this, 10,000, or is it under it?
So I can just probably explain a little better than me, but basically right now, because of the situation where the grant's gonna be coming from, everything under that has a $10,000 threshold on it. We're looking at extending that to 50,000 so that it doesn't have to come before you for every purchase, like all of our other purchases where I have the $50,000 authority, or we could be bringing a lot of things before the board to have approval on, with the ESSER funding, so.
Our local policy for purchases is $50,000, right, Mr. G. EDGAR, which is what governs how we spend our federal dollars, has the $10,000 limit. But if you're classified as a low auditee, we can raise that up to 50. So then we're consistent across the board. We don't have to think and figure out which one really applies. So
And I think that's the distinction, is I didn't clarify that, you know, the $50,000 threshold in our policy is state, local money. But the federal money has a $10,000 threshold, unless, because of our audit situation, because we have a very low risk, we're allowed to bump it to the 50,000 threshold.
For the newer members, that is his, he's allowed up to $50,000 before he has to bring it to the board to have anything approved as a superintendent.
But now, this specific change would be for the ESSER funding only,
Right.
correct?
Right.
Okay.
Well, any federal
Any
funding.
Federal funding, okay.
I mean, most of the other, we never had this issue until ESSER came along.
Right. Okay.
But we'll receive some notice of the grant application and award, so we'll know what those dollars are looking like as they're coming through, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So
And we'll see.
we might know in advance, for example, we're gonna make this expenditure, whether or not we've made monetary approval for it or not.
Well, I mean, it's strictly information only, you don't adopt it, so
Right.
that's how we will be telling you what we're buying and what we're gonna use the money for.
So we have to submit a plan to TEA.
Yes.
And one quick question about the ESSER funding. Will that be one distribution, or will that be, quarterly distributions, or?
As we spend the money, we can draw down what we spend.
So receiving it.
I think it's, is there a total grant coming in for which we'll
Is it
make?
coming in all at once?
Close out? Okay.
I mean, it's gonna be, well, ESSER 3 is about $3 million, but only 2/3 of it's approved so far, so we got about $2 million. And the length of the grant, there's some discussion of whether it's 24 months or 36 months. And as we spend the money down, I can draw down the money, put the money back into our account. It's like any of our other federal money, we have to spend it first and then they pay us.
So, okay, so you don't show the grant money in a special fund
Yes,
maintenance?
it has its own
Okay.
fund. ESSER 3 is 282.
Okay, so we will see the changes in that as the money is brought in.
Yes.
But are you saying you spend the money and then we get repaid it?
Yes.
Okay, so the cycle is how much in arrears are the payments normally from when we make expenditures?
Usually around the 10th to the 12th of the month, I draw down whatever we spent the previous month.
Okay.
Or that's my goal every month. Sometimes it's a little later, sometimes I get it done a little earlier.
So that's moving from one fund to general fund operations?
Right.
Okay. Other questions? Are we okay?
I'm
Yeah.
just curious, if we won't get information, on what's pulled from the survey on what community and stakeholders are interested in for this fund, and let's just hypothetically say we're not gonna know that till maybe August. If we, come up with the results from the survey and then have a plan, what we wanna do with that money, if we start spending it before,
There's a certain amount, 2% is pre-approved, and we're going to hire
Mr. Adams, can you speak into the mic?
oh, sorry. We're going to have a person at central office that's gonna be in charge of this grant. 12 months down the road, we could change directions of how we need to go with it. I mean, and then we just follow amendments at that point in time.
okay.
When we make changes to the plan, we have to go through a process if we make changes to the plan.
I think the
So-
question was, we won't know for a little while what the public's idea is,
Right,
so.
so if we're spending, what are we
Are we
spending on?
spending it before we get the information and make the
If we
plan?
don't know what the public wants it to be spent on?
So when the principals did their comprehensive needs assessment, they did that with their site-based committees, which
Okay.
includes teachers,
Right.
other staff members, parents, and community members. And when we did our presentation of our comprehensive needs assessment, they included that information in their plan. So based on their data from the 21 spring, they have a tentative idea of what they want to spend it on. So we have that data too. Also, as he mentioned, we have to bring, for information only, we have to bring it to the board before we submit the application to say, this is what we talked about, and we'll make sure that in that presentation it includes some survey data as well as what came out of the site-based committee. So I think what I hear you asking is, are we flying blind? The answer is no.
Well, it's more, since we just said almost 450 people have committed or completed this survey on what we should do with these funds. But here we are, let's go ahead and just say we're gonna start spending it so we can be reimbursed. I just wanna make sure that we're taking into account this survey that was just sent out, and we're encouraging people to have their voice heard, so I wanna,
Well,
that was my
I
question.
mean, the only thing that we're starting with is an administrator to
Right.
administrate it.
Yeah,
That's the only thing we're actually committing to right now.
okay, that's good to know. I just wanted to make that clear too, since we led the meeting with everyone do this survey, and now we're saying we're gonna start spending so we can be reimbursed.
No.
Do you think you'll be part of the budget process? We will know kind of what we're looking at and where the expenditure will be, so we'll have that information? Or is that too early? Or too late?
There's certain things that we're talking about adding, some reading interventionist, math interventionist, fresh start, some social
Position,
workers.
full-time, fresh start position, so.
So those will go in before budget cycles, what you're telling me, to get,
Right,
because.
these are new things, but the good thing about ESSER 3 is we can supplant some of the stuff that we're spending locally, and we can redirect that money to somewhere else.
Okay. But what you've described, though, fits within the category of the items to help us deal with the loss
Yes.
as a result of COVID, et cetera. Okay.
And let me just, again, clarification, when will we get sort of this summation of those ideas that you just said? Because it sounds like there's already some ideas.
July board meeting,
The July board meeting, okay,
before the applications.
okay.
So the application is due the 27th, so our July 17th board meeting,
We'll know kind of what
I
the
believe
input is.
we will have a public hearing basically at that point in time.
Okay.
Thank you for.
Okay, my question is, if you'll go back over our superintendent already has the ability to spend $50,000 for local funds.
Yes,
He already has that.
yes,
In
So-
state, correct?
And local and state.
Local and state.
local and state.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is just adding permission at the federal level for ESSER, or for all federal?
Well, it's all,
everything?
it'll apply to all federal grants, but most of our other federal grants, we don't spend $50,000 for what are considered micro purchases.
Okay, now what would an example of a micro purchase be?
Like, the supplementary materials for.
Yeah, supplementary
Like
materials.
licenses for Imagine Learning, that's $15,000.
Right. If we have something that goes over the 50,000, we'll still have to come back and ask for your blessing to buy that kind of thing. But, up to 50,000, Mr. G is authorized to spend it.
And even with that, you're still gonna list all that, when it comes to the board and,
I don't
what you're
know that
spending.
we're gonna list it specifically,
but,
in general terms, what we're planning on doing.
So this change will obviously apply to ESSER, which we're talking about, but all federal grants. So what are the other federal grants that we have that this would also apply to?
Okay, we have Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, IDEA Part B. There's one more, seven.
Perkins.
Perkins. Thank you. I'm looking there.
Okay, so this would apply to all of those.
It applies to all of them, but most of them we get, what,
Not
Perkins, we get like
50,000.
25,000.
Okay,
IDEA preschool, it's 5,000.
It's Title I really is what it would apply to.
Title I and IDEA
have the biggest pools of money, you're saying?
have the biggest pools, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments or concerns? Then I will entertain a motion to adopt the resolution to policy CBB legal as presented.
Make a motion to adopt the resolution to policy CBB legal as presented.
second.
Motion by Mr. Glovier and seconded by Mr. Bisco. Is there further discussion?
Yes,
Okay?
that's very nice. I would like a report of whatever, even though we don't have to vote on it, just to know for the public to know what we're spending money on. It doesn't matter, I mean, I know you're gonna buy whatever is for kids, that's not the point. But just so the people that don't come to the meetings know, this is what we're doing with the money. It's for your children.
We have to publish a plan on the website.
We have to put it
Yeah.
on the website regardless.
Well, I mean, he just said we might not get a detailed report, just something where everybody is aware of what's going on. That's my only
Well,
point.
and just so I clarify what they want to do, if they say, if the plan says X number of dollars of ESSER funding has been approved for these, do you want more breakout than that, or?
No, I want reading street,
Okay.
what'd you just say? Imagine learning, just a list.
Will that be difficult to do?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, they do that.
So with
Okay.
that caveat, it's basically not part of the policy, but part of the direction?
Just for information for the public.
Any other concerns or questions with regard to that? Then we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair hears none. That motion passes unanimously with one caveat for additional information. We now move to item 9, personnel. As we
For
get-
information only, it's the resignations, the current resignations, then you have the list of the new hires, the current new hires that we've already brought into play. This is continually updating every day, so we have more new hires that are coming in, and up until the deadline, we will continue to have probably more resignations, so.
And then we have other matters concerning personnel. Do we need to take any action with regard to closed session, Mr. G, that you know of?
I have a comment first, if you don't mind. This was one of the questions that I had sent out regarding the resignations that we were gonna discuss. And so my question was, for the resignations, do we do like an exit survey? And my response that I got back was, yes, we do. We do. HR does do an exit survey, and that generally in July or August, we get an update of what those exit surveys showed, if you will. As my question was, yes, we see the resignation letters here, but is there another little process that's a little bit more in-depth? And my understanding is yes, and we get a briefing. So I just wanted that for the.
The board.
And
for the-
Brandy's
for
here.
the-
I mean, she can tell you kind of what that
We will.
process is.
We will get a board presentation was the response I got.
Right. Again, Brandy's here if you want to get a real general statement from her if necessary.
Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. We do have exits that come in periodically through the month of May, June, into July. So really, right now is too early to give you a full picture of the exits. But I will provide you a detail of ratings that all resigning, terminated employees, retiring employees will rate the district, they'll rate the supervisor, they'll rate communication, they'll rate benefits, et cetera. So my comments as well, so absolutely.
Excellent, thank you.
So then we'll move on to item 10, the superintendent's report. Mr. G.
All right. You all have the district s'mores from the campuses and from central office curriculum area. Have any questions or anything there? Nope. Okay. So moving on to the community meetings. We are having our third community meeting on June 22nd, Tuesday night, next Tuesday, at the junior high school, starting at 6 o'clock to approximately 8 o'clock. We will be working in some small groups to facilitate some discussion. We were supposed to have a meeting this afternoon. It got canceled because Mr. Gadbois could not do it because he was off on a job site and couldn't get to the computer. So we're having that meeting tomorrow to kind of finalize the plans for that meeting and how that's going to operate and function. But get the word out. If we have some more people show up, it'd be great. The last meeting, we've had two prior meetings. The first one was basically the general overview of all the developments that were coming into our district and the transportation considerations with sublet expansion and the corridor that will be coming in, how that could be affecting our district. And then the second meeting was more about our scenarios that we had created and worked through and the process of how we worked through those scenarios and what's led us up to this point in time so far. And then, like I said, Thursdays or Tuesday's meeting will be to sit there and kind of delve deeper into those scenarios and kind of look at what our options are and what's our best option moving forward. So that's kind of a quick synopsis of where we are with those. And I'm looking at possibly having the fourth meeting on around the 8th of July, okay?
I mean,
8th of July, and then hopefully having a recommendation brought before y'all on the July board meeting. So if we can process that fast, so that would be the goal. Okay, and then any questions or anything on the meetings, community meetings so far? We had, I'd say, decent turnout, it's been pretty consistent, so. Okay. And then the next, we have had a request to get some information on basketball court. There was an idea of putting a basketball court on our new tennis court area. The tennis courts have already been striped and everything, and they're 95% finished. So I don't know that that's going to be a viable option. Plus the wear and tear on the new surface that we just put on there, and the consideration that it's going to be screened in and it's behind all of the buildings back here. There are safety concerns of having a basketball court open to the community in that area. There is talk of possibly having a basketball court put on the front part of the junior high school, either on the left side or the right side in front of the practice field. We have that big washed out area on the side where we could build a court there. Ms. Mode has requested quotes, a general idea of what a basketball court to create a basketball court would cost. We're still waiting on that company to get back with us on those courts, but I will have that information to you by the next board meeting. So, okay.
Okay, I asked for that. Well, okay, yeah, it started at the meeting when we talked about this back here. So my concern with that is this. I drove back there and there's one section that's not already striped. I went to other high schools and they share tennis and basketball as well. But the concern of safety, when they play tennis, who's back there? Who's watching them? Who's monitoring? So I don't see where the safety concern is a concern. If it's a concern for one group, it's a concern for everybody.
I don't think that we have the volume playing tennis that we would have possibly playing basketball, and that may be the biggest issue is just the volume, sheer volume if we have an open court. But as far as my understanding is that they are all striped already, so.
They are. I walked the court with Hellas on the 3rd of June. The specs had every court set up as a tennis court.
When,
You
well,
have to go check that, double check, but I'm pretty positive it's already done.
and that's fine, but like I said, other places, they do double duty. And not to have the whole thing, but at least one court. This is the high school. We only have one. So where if one part of the community can play tennis, then at the high school, then the other part should be able to play at the high school as well. And it used to be like that before the PAC was there. They did both. So I know, that's why I was asking how much it would cost just to put a goal on one side.
As far as the striping and stuff like that, basketball guys are not gonna care about what your stripes are on the court.
No, they say basketball.
But having a goal sitting up in the middle of, or up above it, you may have some issues with tennis balls coming off of it when they're playing tennis. But, as far as that goes, but I just, for me, I want to see a basketball court outside that kids can play in the community. It's kind of a rite of passage that you have to beat the older guys before you can, say you're the man. And you really don't have that opportunity here in Kennedale hardly at all, because there's probably one set of basketball goals, two. You got the one at the park, and then you got the one at the small park off Sublette, and that has one goal.
We have Arthur that has basketball goals.
Arthur still has some?
Yes.
Okay. But
We're still pursuing it. I just haven't got costed on it. I've asked for all three.
Thank
I just haven't gotten costed.
you. I appreciate it. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Are you looking at what, 4 goals or just 2 goals or?
The original, and keep in mind, I think we were just kind of conversation, the original was for 1 goal on the tennis court.
Right.
So that's what I asked for. I asked for a standalone here beside the old, I call it the old field house just because there's a new field house in that parking area there. And then a standalone at the junior high. They're off the thought in talking with the safety and security director and in talking with Coach Croft, he was like, you know, even though tennis rightfully they do, that's usually 1 or 2 people there, but with basketball, you can get a lot more people. And with it being back behind the school and not real visible, that we felt like probably putting it in front of the junior high, because that's where everybody would see it, coming down Bowman Springs, or Corey Edwards, I'm sorry, Bowman Springs kind of, sort of. But there's the spaces there, there's room there, and it would be very visible. Whereas if we stick it back here, it's not visible. The location of the tennis court's not ideal either, but that's where the spot was chosen when they moved the pack and stuff around, so. And to your concern too, back when the tennis courts were there and the lights were there, we did have some issues with stuff happening on the basketball court, the lights getting left on and, you know, stuff like that. But we can remedy those, in other areas too, or we could just not put lights on and that kind of takes care of that late night stuff too. But we're looking into it, just don't have cost as of yet.
Okay, thank you. Because it looks strange to have baseball, softball, tennis, football, even though most of us are not allowed on the track to walk. I just think it needs to,
I think it,
and I appreciate you looking into it.
I think it doesn't even just look interesting, it's an equity of access issue, really. And like the statement was made, there's more that would probably be playing basketball than tennis, that was a statement that was made. So I think it's an equity of access issue, really. So I'm glad we're looking at something that needs to be done, because it does need to be equitable.
I believe we have 4 goals at Arthur already.
But will those stay if Arthur ends up being turned into an early learning?
And are they
It's
8-foot
built more than
goals?
basketball, so that's what it's built for.
Yeah.
There's certainly plenty of room there. Again, what the community wants us to do is what we're gonna do there.
Right, right.
But yeah, I think there's 2. I think there's only 2
I think
there,
it's
aren't
2.
there? There might be 4. There is some at Patterson, but due to the Kaboom grant and the playground there is 2 on this side. They may have taken the other 2 down, when Kaboom came through, but there are goals there, but they are locked.
Mm-hmm, right.
Are they 8-foot goals or 10-foot goals?
Who knows?
They're-
I would be lying if I tried to guess. I have no idea.
pretty sure they're full-size
I'm assuming
goals.
they're 8
No,
because
no,
it's
no,
an
the
elementary.
height.
Height.
If your 8-foot goals is usually from up to junior high.
Yeah, I'm
10-foot
pretty
goals,
sure it's the lower ones.
that's what I was thinking. Most people, especially that's gonna play outside, are gonna wanna play on the taller goals. And most of the guys that are, guys and ladies, because I had one too, that, at 4th grade, she played on the select team, and those are all 10-foot goals, so she couldn't play on the 8-foot goals anymore. So it's one of those things you have to consider when you're putting them up. Put them up at 10 if you're gonna have them outside, or have one
Yeah.
as an 8-foot goal.
Did you say you had a time frame of when you might have the estimates?
By the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and I understand these extra facilities we have are for our students. I mean, in terms of
Right.
tennis court, track.
You're correct.
Those are designed for students. If you're talking about public access, you're creating a whole new animal, and we need to understand that. I mean,
But with that statement, that means the tennis court is designed for the students,
primarily, it's usually.
Primarily.
Primarily, yes.
but the community mostly,
Some community, I mean, there's been
Right.
times where they've been locked too, so it depends what the policy we have as far as access. So it's like, we want people on the track, there's concern that you wear it out
Oh, yeah.
reasonably soon. Can play on the football field, we wear it out reasonably soon. Can they get on the softball, and baseball fields? It depends. So we really need to be careful as we talk about it, that we figure out what policy we want to have as far as access to those
Okay.
facilities by the community.
And
That's
our
a conversation.
baseball field, softball field, and our football field, turf football field are not public access. you know, the junior high is open for public access. The junior high field, the junior high track, those are open for public access.
I just think that we'll need to be clear about the policy, because you're gonna say, why does this work for one group and not for the other? And so we have
That's
to
correct.
be thinking about the policy as we go forward with this conversation.
I think that's a conversation that's worth having.
Yeah.
So, that might guide the decisions that we make.
And so I think we need to probably, I'll talk to Chad about putting that in the discussions next. All right? Anything else on item C, which is the basketball court? So that brings us to D, data review.
Okay, so I believe Mr. Bisco had asked about our energy savings, so you have a sheet in front of you that basically kind of maps that out. Ms. Moog put that together along with Ms. Golford. They been tracking it from January until September when it was approved. You can see the dollar amounts that were being spent on electricity in the district in 2019. The green highlight of September is when we started implementing the ideal impact contract and started getting systems put in place. And then you can see the numbers start dropping there. And then that carried over until basically, I believe we were finished up by, oh my goodness, January of the next year. We had got everything in place for that. And you can see from January and then February, we start getting, you know, $3,000 less than the year before, then 3,000 something, then we jump at 10,000, then we jump to 18,000. So the savings are kind of, you're starting to see the savings now. About March, that's when we hit COVID, and then those bigger savings showed up whenever we turned it, COVID started coming into play. And then through the summer, the usage was still shut off. Then we come back into the school buildings, but you can see what we spent this year, the beginning of this year, and then where we are up to this date now. So
we are getting the savings.
Yeah, that's great.
Looks like it.
So there's that bit of data for you. Now, our next data is the kind of an update on our facilities. As I said, the tennis courts, they're trying to put I think the last thing left on the tennis courts is the, what are the boards called? What's it? Fiber boards, sorry, okay, fiber boards that they hit against we had the wood ones out there that were all warped and everything. So these are the fiber boards that won't warp. Those still have to be put in place, but then that project should be completed. And then you see the progress with the track. I don't know if you noticed that as you're walking in, they've got it basically, the top layer put in. They'll have to come back in and do the striping on that. But right now with the rain and everything, they were delayed, but they've been working on weekends and trying to catch up, and they should be back on schedule with getting that project done when it's supposed to be done by the beginning of the season. So, and then we do not have all of our STAR data in, but we will be looking at doing our taper report in September and getting all of our STAR data compiled. I will tell you what we do have in is not pretty, you know, it's what everybody else is seeing across the state and nation. COVID took a toll, so I mean it's not going to be anything fantastic to look at. We will have in July we should have our end of the year map data, and we'll have a summary of stuff for there. And that's pretty much the report.
Okay. That brings us down to board discussion. First item is our next regular meeting will be July 15, 2021. Anybody have any concerns with that date or problems with that date?
No, I think we were gonna have a discussion about how we ask questions as a board.
I'll come to that.
Okay, perfect.
Local district orientation for all new members is now scheduled for July 6th. Is that, again, please, and I know new members, I forgot to say, Tracy, you guys have been knocking out a lot of your training, and that's great. I appreciate y'all getting that done early, quick, and often. So we'll get this last piece done, and you'll be rocking and rolling. You'll probably be way ahead of it, because by the 24th and 25th, you have a chance to start doing some of the TASB events and get more of those hours. Good thing about that is you can sign up for more than you could get to. You just have to come back and see it at a different time. So pick and choose what's interesting to you. New members, you have to do the local stuff, the new member stuff, but go grab some of those other things that are interesting to you. Just sit there in bed and watch it on their computer or something. Yeah, that's helpful. So make sure you check on the 21st, that data comes out, get signed up. And I think it used to be that you got locked out of someone there full, but with the ability to review it later, that shouldn't be a problem. So if it's interesting, take it, if you're interested, take it. One board member asked for discussion about, there's concern about questions being sent into the superintendent, responses being made, and I have a concern that the more that we have and the more of it's shared with us, we may run afoul of the potential for violating open meetings. And so I want to have a discussion about how you would prefer, in terms of, if you have questions, I want them answered. And individually, if you send a question to the superintendent, I want him to answer it. But we got to be careful when it's sent to all, and then somebody says something back, that starts to get close to that conversation that we got to be careful about. So one suggestion would be, if needed, we could perhaps schedule, if y'all don't mind doing, come in 15 minutes before the regular meeting, get here like at 6:45 or 6:30, and call it a work session, and any of those questions that came up, we could just quickly go over those, so you could hear the question, the answers, so we heard each other's question and responses, if it's a point. If you're interested in doing that, we gotta make that decision. If you're not interested in doing it, we can keep doing it the way we are, we get individual responses. And it's kind of how y'all wanna get information from each other's questions back and forth without violating Open Meetings Act issues.
And we were, like you said, the three of us were just at training, and so we asked this question at the Educational Resource Center there, and how to do that. And I know that, I guess, that previously, it was kind of send it to the superintendent, he would disseminate it to the staff who had the data or could look it up, and then send the questions and answers to all of us, so we would all benefit from each question. But like you said, very careful with the Open Meetings Act. So what their statement was, is that what they're recommending is if that still wants to be the procedure, just very clearly indicate, I think like Ms. Williams did earlier when she sent something out, for information only, do not reply all. And they felt like a statement like that and an understanding between everybody would still, would cover the fact that we could still get everybody's questions, hear the answer, receive the answers, but not respond.
Even blind copy everyone, so you
But-
can.
Yeah, or
but
even
you-
blind
but you-
copy.
But you have to be careful, even with that,
Yeah.
someone could question, well, everybody's getting all this information, it's not being discussed in public. And so, in terms of that, you've got to be careful. And again, it's a lot more work on Tracy to start responding to everybody, put all the information out. And again, accidentally clicking that wrong button, that's now been a discussion. And, there are litigious people out there, because I'm a lawyer. And I will tell you, people go after you for anything. So I want to make sure that we do it as a group, that we're comfortable with how we do it, and we share our information, but I don't want to put anybody in a position where there's a potential of violating the Open Meetings Act. And
I think
again,
the only concern with doing it as a work session just before the meeting, 15 minutes before, is if we have a whole slew of questions, and is that gonna spill into 7 o'clock? What if we don't have all the information present because someone has to go find it?
well, no, my point was, if you send a question in,
Okay,
they would have the information, we would share that information, the question and answer, that 15 minutes before, so everybody, if you're
Okay.
interested in, you can get the response, you knew what was said. It's not a long discussion, it's more of a work session. This question was asked, this was the response.
Is that something you'd have to shut the door for the public?
No, it's a work session, it's a public meeting. It would still potentially be on, it would be up for discussion. It's just just more in our meeting. And
Okay.
again, it's done before the meeting so that we have it before we start our meeting and conversation. That, to me, is an easy way to avoid it. It's a harder way on us.
That's fine.
I mean, and again, I don't care if all the staff is here, we have to have our IT person turning us on, but, other than that, it's just us getting in here and getting that out. It may be nothing, there may be no questions and there's nothing to discuss, and so we're here and we can
And
chat.
That's also a recording, part of the recording and everything.
Again, we could state that there's nothing to work on the work session, and we could start and stop it, and recess it or end it. I mean, we have to come up with a mechanism where we all can participate, and it's publicly noticed.
No, I think what we're doing right now is okay. The possibility of an accidentally hidden reply all is always there. If there's questions or a lot of questions that we need the information, we could call it or do, as you say, before the meeting, but I think do that on a
As needed?
As needed basis.
I'm okay with how we're gonna do it. I want us to be a board that works without any issues. And so I don't want anybody challenging what we've done or how we've done it.
The problem with that would be the timeline of when you have the questions, when you get the questions to us, and then posting it as a public 72 hours in advance that you're gonna have that work session.
So you have to do
And
this.
if you're, if we don't get those questions until Monday, or we get them over the weekend, and we can't get it lined out until the next Monday, then we start getting into the realm that we're not within the 72 hours
Can it
before
not be
to post it.
put on the agenda as work session as needed?
Again, technically, the work session should probably have the questions and
The
answers, because we're
okay.
gonna talk about it. So I mean, it probably should have that detail, and that's the problem. It's more work for Tracy in that regard,
Okay.
because it's more on the agenda, but, that's the only way I know to pretty much protect us, that there's never gonna be a problem, because we just know our policies, we don't respond as a group, we have a discussion at the meeting. The other possibility, and it's much more difficult, is we start thinking about having a regular mid-month work session. Where you have issues that are out there, we talk about them, and they would come up at the next meeting, so that it's more work for us, it's more work for staff, but, again, it may not happen that often, but that's a way to do it.
You're basically having 2 board meetings a month.
Well, currently, we're getting the agenda well in advance, so if someone were to have questions, then there should also be a deadline of when those questions are submitted. And then, so we're not waiting less than the 72 hours to submit them and then call a 15-minute.
And I agree with that, but I also worry that then we're gonna have questions popping up in the board meeting that, it's sprung out there, and now we're gonna have to go dig in to find answers. It's not gonna be something that we have access to get to, and then we're gonna be sitting here fumbling around trying to find answers for
Well,
something.
Yeah.
That's why we try to get the questions in advance, so that we can sit there and answer those to you.
I think that should be the goal, and then it should be maybe understood that if it's not submitted in advance, then we'll do our best to not be.
Or we can always pull it off the agenda because we still need more information.
Again, my preference would be, the purpose of you asking a question of any member is to have the information to come to the meeting with. That doesn't preclude you from talking about it during the meeting,
Right,
saying,
of course
I
not,
raised this
right.
question, it came up, and we all benefit from it. I mean, but the point is, I would rather our staff have the answers than not.
Of course.
I mean, and
Right.
so,
Right.
again, if there's always more that could grow out of it, and I'm trying to
Right.
find a way that we get the information,
Right.
Yeah.
and we can keep our staff where they're able to answer information, and we can also keep items on the agenda without taking them off month
And
to month.
hopefully the orientation training on the 6th will help with some of that as well.
Yeah, oh, it's better for everyone to have it further.
Right. Again, I'm bringing it up as a discussion, because, I
Yes.
mean,
And I think that's.
Rita talked about it.
Some of the things that you were just mentioning is why they made that suggestion. Of course, all those options were brought up, a separate work session, coming in a few minutes beforehand. But obviously, it seemed to be less time intensive if you could submit the questions, and then the superintendent submit all the questions and answers to all of us with the statement of do not reply all. But I'm open to all those, because I'm gonna be very diligent and thorough, as I think we all are, and we're gonna have questions, and I like to hear other people's questions. That's kind of how it generated
Right.
too. Because I know my questions and answers, but if Daryl's got a question or anybody's got, I want to know what their questions were and what their answers were before coming in here as well, is helpful to know just everybody's thought process. So however we do it, I'm committed to doing it.
again, I'm comfortable with them giving information to all of us, but I'm just warning everybody, we have got to be very diligent, and there's no response to it.
Right.
And
For
that's
information
what it
only.
comes down to.
Right, for
Yeah,
information
it's-
only.
I mean, and if y'all are comfortable with that, we'll continue the process where if a question is asked, it gets disseminated, the question answered to all board members. But please do not respond. I mean, don't reply all. Don't, if you see somebody else's question, ask another question to the superintendent, because you're really getting close to starting to have a discussion about an item. And please, get your questions in early so we get them answered, don't wait till the day before. And
I think as long as we continue to direct our questions, for me, it's either to you or G or to Tracy. And not, that's it as far as directing the questions. And I understand your concerns, but I've got enough meetings at my job to,
And that's why, I don't want y'all to have to, I appreciate every minute y'all put in. I know how much work it is. I
So
don't-
my only concern about delaying getting answers is that, sometimes you really want to think through how you want to, move towards or away from a particular issue.
Right.
the sooner I get that information, the more time I think I'll have time to kind of run it through.
Right.
To come in with an answer myself. You know, sometimes having 15 minutes before the meeting starts may not be enough time.
Correct.
So, and I don't have the answer, okay? I don't have the answer, but I would say that the sooner I get answers to questions that I would have,
Right.
the more comfortable I would feel in making my decisions on what's going to be on the agenda.
Then for now, it sounds like the consensus, for now, let's just kind of keep it the way it is currently. Ask your question, Mr. G, and have him copy the questions and answers to all board members, if that's okay. But
Of course, with the warning or reminder at the
We-
bottom,
she
please do
reminded,
not
please
reply
do
all.
not. But
That's one reason why instead of me just
Yeah.
sending it
And,
back,
yeah.
we try to send it to Tracy because she has that
I'm just
out to everyone.
I don't know how many times I've seen it where it says, do not reply all, and the next thing you look at, you've got all. And it's just all. So, I mean,
Brian's laughing.
I'm sorry, no matter how many times you say, it's just, you know, you're looking at it and your finger flinches and it goes from reply one to reply, because they're right next to each other. It's not, you know, they're not like they're over here.
It's
So,
one of the reasons I keep this email totally separate.
just
from
please
all
be careful
other emails.
so that nobody gets into trouble. Okay, so we know where we're going with that. Then, I believe that covers all of our items on the board discussion, all items on tonight's agenda. Any other questions or comments by trustees, concerns that we need to talk about? If you do, give them to me, and we'll talk about them on the next agenda if it's an issue we can fit in, all right? Thank you for all attending, thank you for watching when you watch it. We are adjourned at 7:56.